Hello everyone, it's July 24th, 2018. It's Tuesday. It's Harp Tuesday. Welcome to this episode. This is an episode for composers, though hopefully if you're not a composer, you'll find it interesting as well. And what I want to talk about this week is pedal markings and pedal charts. And this was inspired by a post, I think, on the Harp list, where somebody asked, should I include a pedal chart in maybe every X number of bars in a harp part? And I thought it was a very fascinating question, and I just kind of wanted to go over that. But before I talk about pedal charts, I want to talk about pedal markings. And so what are pedal markings? On the pedal harp, we have to physically do something when we encounter an accidental, for example. So let's say that we're in the key of C, and we need a B flat. Instead of just playing a different key or pressing a different button, changing something with our hands that are already creating the sound, we need to use our feet to move the B pedal up. So it's now B flat. And what will happen then is, typically, we will write where that's going to occur. We'll write underneath that a B flat. So here, for example, this is my arrangement of Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. You can see that episode somewhere and download the sheet music if you want. And on the second page, towards the end, there is an F natural. So you can see I've put F natural right here. Okay. And then later on, actually, no, right, the next bar, we go back to F sharp. And so there's an F sharp down there. And this is just saying, put your foot on the F pedal and change it to natural. Well, F pedal, change it back to sharp, right? So it's just telling us what to do with our feet, just like the notes are telling us what to do with our fingers. Now, as you get better and better and more familiar with the pedal harp, you may find you don't always need those pedal markings. So for me, if I were to encounter this without any pedal markings, I'd be playing, I would be just fine. I think I'd see, oh, there's a natural, I'll put it back, and then I'd put the sharp back. But especially if you're starting, you'll want these just as a physical reminder of what you're doing. And I think you can put pedal markings into two broad categories, simple and complex. So simple are ones like this, where it occurs and then later on we get another one and we can just kind of change them as they occur and everything will work out fine. But what can happen is that sometimes we get pedal changes that require prior planning. This is one of the reasons why the harp can be a difficult instrument to sight read with. So that, let's say right here, we need an F natural. We also need a G sharp, both of which are normally changed with the right foot. And just so we can't use the left foot over on that F, maybe we also need a C sharp, which is no problem. We'll just change it with the left foot. But that means we got two changes here, the F natural and the G sharp, going on right at the same moment. And we can't do them both at the same moment. So what we do typically is we'd go back and we'd say, okay, well, we have a G natural, a bunch of G naturals here, but we don't have an F, and last time we played an F was all the way back to here. Great. At any point in here, we can change our F to natural ahead of time, and then change the G sharp here. But that's not apparent. That's something that we have to plan out, and that's very difficult. If we're sight reading, we get to here, we see both of these. Even if we're ahead, maybe in this case we could, if we were reading ahead far enough, we would maybe notice, oh, this is happening here, and maybe be able to scan and say, okay, and change my F to natural here. But these type of pedal changes, this planning ahead, is one of the cases where you really do have to write in all these pedal changes. Let me give you another example. This is a contemporary piece by a friend of mine. She wrote it for piano, as you can see. This is harp adaptation and very chromatic, right? So pedal changes almost basically every beat. Even if these were all simple pedal changes, in other words, just kind of occurring, we didn't have to plan ahead on any of them, and that's not the case. Some of them we do have to plan ahead. There's so many of them, and we're not in any appreciable key that to try and read this without the pedals would be, I don't want to say impossible, but pretty much impossible. And again, your experience level is going to play into that. 25 years ago, I would have needed many more pedal changes marked than I do now. Now I often go through and I get lazy and I don't mark pedal changes in. But I think the best practice is to include pedal changes for you as a harpist, speaking as a harpist, is to write your pedal changes in for two reasons. One, you might forget and then come back to it years later and wish you'd written them in. And two, if you're teaching at all or coaching anybody, it's nice to be able to say, here are my pedal changes for this piece. Whereas if you don't have them, it's a bother. Because again, students are much more likely to need those pedal changes marked in, whereas you were able to just do them automatically. As a composer, should you include pedal changes? So in a piece like this, I would say, yes, you have to include pedal changes. It's useless without the pedal changes. There's so many going on. There's no guarantee that the harpist you give it to is going to find the ones that you figured out would work, or the harpist you're working with figured out would work. And they might just say, oh, this is impossible. And again, I think it's a required part of a very chromatic contemporary piece like this. If you want it to get played, include the pedals and make sure they're accurate. We'll get to that in a moment. Something like this, you don't need to. I do. For me, on my music that I publish, I include the pedal changes because my feeling is for the people who need them, they really need them. And for the people who don't, they can stand having them there. I'll talk about a couple reasons why you might not include them, and that's because there's not necessarily one standard way to notate them. So here's how I notate pedal changes. I put them underneath the staves, you can see. That's the way I was taught, that's what I'm used to. Some people will put them in between the staves. That is partly just a habit thing, like which way are you going to do it? I feel like there's often more room beneath the staves and less going on. And I also kind of like the idea of these are the notes that the hands are playing, and here's what the feet are doing, which is beneath. On the other hand, by putting them in the middle, they're maybe more obvious. We can visually, maybe we don't have to scan quite as far down, right? It's maybe visually easier to see. For me, I put lever changes in the middle to distinguish them from pedal changes. So you can see right away, that's an argument to not put in pedal changes because it lets the harpist notate them as they wish. Then where do we notate pedal changes? So I was taught to notate pedal changes as they occur in general. So here's this F natural occurring. I'll change the F to natural right there. There's an argument to be made in a case like this where we could change it earlier, to change it earlier because then there's no risk, and sorry, this may be going out of tune, these are new strings, of something like, of changing it a little bit too late. So we hear, right, if we just change it back here, it's sharp, we change it to natural, no worries. And that's an excellent reason to change it earlier. I have a couple counter arguments against that. The first is sometimes we have to change on the beat or as it occurs, right? Maybe we're going, right? Maybe we're playing sharp and then natural. So we need to have that skill of changing right at the last minute as we're about to play it. So we might as well practice that then by getting in the habit of changing the pedals as they occur. I think it's also maybe a little bit better for sight reading because again, sight reading, unless you're reading a bunch of bars ahead, you may not have that luxury of realizing that this is coming up and it is safe to change it here. So those are my arguments. That's what I would prefer to do. But again, you can see another harpist in the same exact piece might prefer to change it earlier and might change this back to sharp a little bit before that occurs. One final sort of aesthetic thing, and that is you should Okay, the way I was taught was to put the right foot pedal markings, so for example this A, above the left foot pedal markings, in this case this C. This, I think, is completely arbitrary aesthetic or like an arbitrary thing. No reason why putting right above left is any better than putting left above right. But whatever you do, you should do it the same way throughout the piece. So I would suggest do it the Josh Layne way. put the right above left, which I think is that, you know, that's the way I was taught. I think it's the most common. But regardless of what you do, make sure you don't sometimes put right above left and sometimes put left above right if you're including pedal markings in your piece. Okay, so let's get to pedal charts. What is a pedal chart? A pedal chart is a very easy to see depiction of what the pedals physically are set, how they are set. So for example, we draw this and we draw this. This is the middle of the harp. Here are the left hand pedals, the left foot pedals, and here are the right foot pedals. If they're all natural, we put them through this line. There's the 3 on the left and the 4 on the right. If we're in the key of B flat, we do this. These are the two flats, though, because when the pedals are up, they're flat. D, C, B, E, F, G, A is the order. So it's a way of very quickly showing the physical setup of the pedals. Pedal charts are fantastic when you have a non-standard setting. So if we're in a normal key, we can easily describe that. Oh, if I want to know what my pedals are, I can just circle the key signature or whatever. That's easy. But let's take, I did that episode on Capriccio Espagnol and how to play it on lever harp. There's a spot in there that are a perfect example of where a pedal chart is super helpful. Here's this gliss. This gliss, he's very, very nicely and helpfully written it in. A natural, B flat, C sharp, D flat, E natural, F flat, G natural, A natural, B flat, C sharp. Great. But we would have to go through and A, B to flat, C to sharp, D to flat, E to natural, F to flat, G to natural, A to natural, and B. Okay, there we are. Now we got our pedal setting. And this is the setting that's not any particular key, right? We've got a C sharp, we got 3 naturals and 3 flats. If we see this pedal chart right here, so let's say I'm back in the key of C, I see this pedal chart, I can immediately get there. Boom. I don't have it's just automatic. So I would of course put that in when I get to something non-standard like this. Or there's another example right on the next page. Here, instead of writing all the notes on these little gushing chords or glisses, he's written them in here. C sharp, C flat, D natural, E sharp, F natural, G sharp, A flat, B natural. Again, I have to go through that. And even if I've done it once, will I remember next time? Whereas if I put in this pedal chart, then I see that and I say, okay, I'm good to go. Well, not quite, there we go. And again, that's a non-standard sort of key setting. So glisses, non-standard glisses, are a great spot to include a pedal chart. And the bonus is it makes it really clear what you intend, right? We can't miss it. Even, we might miss an accidental if you write it out like this. You can do that as well. Like write it out like this on a gliss. Write out the first start of a scale, even if after that you go just gliss. It's just a line. But then, like this. Then, and here's an example. It's not entirely clear what he wants here. I believe he wants this same setting. But it would be nice if there was a pedal chart there, as well as maybe showing the first octave of the scale. But put the pedal chart in there. And, sometimes you'll get some music, particularly say in musicals, where they might just say, we want a A minor ninth or something, or C major 7, whatever, gliss. I don't have all those memorized. Maybe you do, which is great. More power to you. Now there's a little cheat sheet you can buy from Sylvia Woods, for example, that gives you pedal charts for all those glisses. So I would suggest, as a composer, I would want to have that and put the pedal charts in and not rely on the harpist having to know that or look it up. And it's just so clear. It makes it so clear what is wanted. So pedal charts are fantastic for non-standard settings. Now, they're also really helpful when you may be starting in a spot, right, that's not, say, the beginning of the piece. So here, let's go back to this again. Let's say we stopped over here and we want to go back and rehearse from here. Or I'm just practicing it and I want to practice this little chunk. Well, there's so much that's happened since then, and this is, again, some sort of non-standard key. I don't know what the pedal settings would be here. So I should put a pedal chart in if I think I'm going to want to start right here. As it is, let's say I'm rehearsing with a cellist. We stop here. We want to go back here. I'll say, well, let's start 2 bars earlier because I do have a pedal chart. Or maybe we'll go through, I'll put a pedal chart in there. This is the type of piece where a pedal chart every bar wouldn't hurt, right? Just because it facilitates rehearsal. And as a bonus, it also means that there's less chance that we miss something. So that if I see this pedal chart here, maybe I happen to have missed a pedal change and maybe I'm not noticing the accidental or whatnot. But this is another way to catch myself and say, oh, oops, this isn't what I have. Let me double check what's going on. So if it's a piece in a normal key, like no need for pedal charts in this Jesu in the Bach here. If it's a contemporary piece with a lot of modulation, and especially if it's a solo piece, you might include some pedal charts just for, again, kind of reinforcing, reminding, or ensuring that there's no errors, that everyone's on the same page, you and the harpist are on the same page. With an ensemble piece, orchestra, if there's been a bunch of modulation and you've arrived at some sort of non-standard key and you think this is a spot that, well, let's stop and start at bar 158, put a pedal chart in there at 158. Harpists will thank you. So what's the kind of the takeaway on this? So for me, the very best score includes accurate pedal markings and pedal charts where they would be more efficient than pedal markings. So, for example, let's say let's take the orchestra thing. Let's say we finish and we've got 8 bars of rest and then we're going to start again. And we move from one non-standard key to another non-standard key. You could put the pedal changes. That's great. But what's going to be so much faster, and again, we have time, we don't have to do it the most efficient way, but what's going to be so much easier, for me at least as a harpist, and I think harpists in general, is to put a pedal chart at the start of that next group. We have 8 bars to get it ready, put the pedal chart there, and we know exactly what we're going to do, right? We know exactly where we're going to go. So, pedal charts where appropriate. Again, for glisses, non-standard stuff is a way to just orient ourselves. It can be really helpful. If you're in typical keys, probably not required. That would be my top option. But what's really bad is when you come across music that has inaccurate pedal changes and inaccurate pedal charts. Because then, not only do you have to do all the work of putting them in, but you're also fighting against, oh, maybe this was right. Oh, no, it's not. Oh, and maybe you're reading through and then you realize it's wrong, or maybe you don't even realize it's wrong until you get to the first rehearsal. So at the top, a really well notated part with pedal markings and pedal charts is appropriate. Then a part with nothing, and then a part with some partial or inaccurate pedal markings and charts. So if you're going to include them, and again, in something like this, I would say it's essential, to make it playable, include them. Something like the Bach or Capriccio Espagnol, no, don't need to include them. Pedal charts, yes, I think that would be good. Pedal changes, probably not. To ensure that you have accurate markings, you're probably going to want to work with a harpist. So hopefully you know a friendly harpist, maybe take them out to dinner, and get their feedback. Hire a harpist to go over a part, right? And make sure that it's playable, make sure that it's workable, or even with the internet, like, hey, get in touch with me. I might have time to do a coaching session, go through something, and let you know if it looks accurate, right? So the harp it can be a challenging instrument to write for effectively. So I think it's an instrument that really, it pays to get feedback from someone who does play it. Hopefully that was interesting and made some sense. And let me know if you have any questions in the comments. See you in a couple weeks. Cheers.